The crystalline palace halls of Kavruna shimmered under twin suns, and Lieutenant Marcus Webb was absolutely certain he was about to cause an intergalactic incident. Not through incompetence, not through miscommunication, but because he couldn't stop staring at her Imperial Majesty, Empress Zhavri of the Kavreth Empire, and she had just noticed. Her skin was the color of deep twilight, violet blue and luminous, marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed faintly along her throat and collarbone. Silver hair cascaded over shoulders left bare by a gown that human diplomats would call dangerously informal. Her eyes, vertical pupils set in pools of amber, locked onto his with an intensity that made his breath stall in his chest. And then she smiled. Not the diplomatic smile she'd given the other delegates. Something warmer, something curious, something that made every Kavreth attendant in the reception hall freeze like statues witnessing blasphemy. Before we see how humanity's most awkward lieutenant survives the next 5 minutes, quick note. If you're enjoying this story, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. These drop regularly, and trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. The Empress stepped down from her elevated platform with movements that seemed to defy gravity itself. Each step deliberate, graceful, predatory in a way that had nothing to do with threat and everything to do with absolute confidence. The crowd of alien dignitaries parted instantly, creating a clear path between them. Marcus felt his heart hammer against his ribs. He was here as part of Earth's first diplomatic contingent, one of 20 humans invited to observe the Kavreth Empire's Ascension Festival. His role was simple. Blend in, observe protocols, don't embarrass humanity. Staring at the Empress like she was the most captivating thing he'd ever seen definitely violated at least 2 of those directives. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could see the subtle shift of colors across her skin. Deeper purple when she moved, lighter lavender when she stilled. Her bioluminescent patterns brightened slightly, pulsing in rhythm with something he couldn't identify. When she spoke, her voice carried the melodic quality all Kavreth possessed, but with an authority that made the words feel like warm honey poured over steel. "You are the human delegate Marcus Webb," she stated. Not a question. He managed a bow that protocol had drilled into him for 3 weeks. "Your Imperial Majesty, I apologize if I—" "You were staring," she interrupted, head tilting slightly. "Why?" The hall held its collective breath. Several Kavreth officials exchanged glances that screamed impending diplomatic catastrophe. Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. Honesty seemed like the only option that wouldn't make this worse. "Because you're extraordinary," he said quietly. "I've never seen anyone like you." The Empress's bioluminescent patterns flared brighter, a sudden cascade of light that rippled across her throat and down her arms. Every Kavreth in the room inhaled sharply. Marcus had no idea what that meant, but from the expressions around him it was significant. She stepped closer, 1 foot, near enough now that he caught a scent like ozone and midnight flowers. Her amber eyes studied his face with an intensity that felt physical. "Extraordinary?" she repeated as if testing the word. "Not beautiful, not regal, extraordinary." "All of those," Marcus admitted, because apparently his brain-to-mouth filter had completely failed. But extraordinary felt more accurate. Something shifted in her expression. The diplomatic mask cracked just slightly, revealing genuine curiosity beneath. She turned to address her attendants without breaking eye contact with him. Her words came in the Kavreth language, too rapid for his translator chip to catch fully, but the tone was unmistakable. Dismissal. The officials hesitated, clearly torn between obedience and concern, then bowed and retreated to the hall's perimeter. The Empress returned her attention to Marcus, and that small smile returned. "Walk with me, Lieutenant Webb. I wish to understand why a human stares when my own people avert their eyes." She didn't wait for agreement. She simply turned and began walking toward a side corridor, clearly expecting him to follow. Marcus glanced toward the other human delegates. Ambassador Chun gave him a barely perceptible nod that somehow conveyed both, "Don't screw this up," and "Good luck surviving." He followed. The corridor was quieter, lined with flowing tapestries that seemed to move in absent wind. The Empress walked beside him now rather than ahead, a subtle shift in dynamic that probably meant something important. "Do you know what it means?" she asked conversationally. "When a Kavreth's bioluminescence brightens in response to another's words?" Marcus swallowed. "No, Your Majesty. It means involuntary emotional resonance," she explained. "A physical response we cannot control when something affects us deeply." She paused at a window overlooking gardens that glowed with alien flowers. "You called me extraordinary, and my body betrayed my reaction before I could control it. That has not happened in a very long time." Marcus processed that carefully. "Should I apologize?" She laughed, a sound like crystal bells that made his chest feel suddenly warm. "No, Lieutenant. You should tell me something honestly." She turned to face him fully, and the setting suns behind her created a halo effect that made her seem almost ethereal. "When you look at me, what do you see?" The question felt loaded with more weight than he could measure. He considered deflecting, saying something diplomatic, something safe. But her eyes held his with an expectation of truth, and he found himself answering with the same honesty that had started this entire interaction. "I see someone who carries the weight of an empire but still notices when a stranger is staring. Someone powerful enough that people fear her attention, but curious enough to ask why instead of punishing. Someone," he hesitated, "someone I'd like to actually know, not just observe from across a diplomatic reception." Her bioluminescence flared again, brighter this time, cascading patterns that raced along her arms and up her neck. She inhaled slowly, deliberately, as if steadying herself. When she spoke, her voice had dropped lower, more intimate. "You are either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish, Marcus Webb." "Probably both," he admitted. "Good." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes with genuine warmth. "The brave and foolish are far more interesting than the cautious and calculated." She gestured toward the gardens. "Come. If I am to understand humanity, I should start with the human brave enough to stare at an empress. And you." Her eyes glinted with something playful and dangerous all at once. "You should learn what it means when a Kavreth chooses to be interested in return." Marcus followed her into the gardens as the twin suns set behind them, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. He had no idea what he'd just started. But as the Empress glanced back at him with that curious, captivating smile, he realized he desperately wanted to find out. The imperial gardens were nothing like the manicured parks of Earth. Bioluminescent vines twisted through crystal trellises, pulsing with soft blue light that brightened and dimmed in hypnotic patterns. Flowers with translucent petals chimed softly when wind passed through them, creating harmonies that felt deliberately composed. The air itself seemed thicker here, charged with something Marcus couldn't name but felt against his skin like static electricity before a storm. Empress Zhavri led him down a winding path of smooth white stone, her bare feet making no sound. She dismissed even her distant guards with a gesture Marcus had learned meant absolute privacy required. That should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like being handed something precious and fragile, trust from someone who rarely gave it. "Tell me about Earth Gardens," she said, trailing elegant fingers along a luminescent vine that brightened at her touch. "Are they designed for beauty or function?" Marcus considered the question. "Both, usually, but they're alive in a different way. Less interactive." He gestured at the vine still glowing where she'd touched it. "Our plants don't respond to presence like yours do." "How tragic," she murmured. Then she glanced at him with that curious tilt of her head. "Touch it. I want to see something." He reached out carefully, brushing the same vine. The bioluminescence dimmed slightly, not extinguishing, but retreating. The Empress made a soft sound of satisfaction. "Fascinating. It responds to body temperature. Kavreth run cooler than humans, so we make them glow. You make them comfortable." "Is that significant?" Marcus asked. She moved closer, near enough that he felt the cool temperature of her skin even without touching. "Everything is significant when understanding a new species. For instance." She reached toward his hand, hovering just above his wrist. "May I?" The question caught him off guard. She was an empress. She could command anything. Yet she asked. Yes, he managed. Her fingers touched his wrist, cool and smooth, like polished stone kept in shade. She pressed gently, finding his pulse. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered rapidly, brighter than before. Your heart rate just increased, she observed. Why? Heat crept up his neck. You're touching me. Does physical contact distress humans? Not distress, he said carefully. It's just unexpected, significant. Her eyes brightened with understanding. Ah, intimacy through touch. We share that, though our expressions differ. She released his wrist but didn't step back. Among my people, sustained eye contact is considered more intimate than casual touch. Yet you looked directly at me from the moment we met. That is why the court reacted as they did. Marcus felt his stomach drop. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Her voice carried gentle firmness. I found it refreshing. Even, she paused as if selecting words carefully. Even appealing. Humans don't know our customs. So your stare was honest curiosity rather than intentional intimacy. That honesty is rare in my world. They walked deeper into the gardens, where the path opened onto a clearing surrounding a still pool of liquid that reflected starlight despite the sun's not yet fully set. The Empress settled onto a bench carved from single piece of dark stone, arranging her gown with unconscious grace. She patted the space beside her. Marcus sat, maintaining a respectful distance. She noticed, and something like amusement flickered across her features. You are careful with space now, she observed. Because I explained the cultural significance? Because I don't want to assume anything, Marcus replied. There's a difference between accidental cultural breach and deliberate disrespect. Her bioluminescence softened to a warm glow. You continue to surprise me, Lieutenant. Most visitors to my court either grovel in fear or perform arrogance to hide that fear. You do neither. She turned to face him more fully. Why were you chosen for this delegation? Your military rank suggests combat experience, yet Earth sent you as a diplomat. Marcus smiled slightly. I'm not actually a diplomat. I'm a xenobiologist who happens to have a military commission. I study alien ecosystems and life forms. When Earth received your invitation, they wanted people who could observe and understand, not just negotiate trade agreements. So you study life, she said thoughtfully. That explains the staring. You were analyzing me. At first, he admitted. Then I stopped analyzing and just saw you. The honesty slipped out before he could filter it. Her patterns brightened again, that involuntary response she'd mentioned earlier. She looked away toward the pool, and Marcus caught something in her expression. Something vulnerable beneath the imperial composure. Do you know what it is like, she asked quietly, to be seen only as a symbol? To have people bow and scrape and offer flowery words, but never once look at you as simply Zhavri? The use of her name without title felt significant. Marcus chose his next words carefully. I can't imagine that kind of isolation, but I think I understand wanting to be seen for who you are rather than what you represent. She met his eyes again, and the intensity there made his breath catch. Then see me, Marcus Webb, not as Empress, not as specimen to study, just as someone sitting beside you in a garden. He looked at her, really looked, past the bioluminescence and alien beauty. He saw the slight tension in her shoulders that suggested constant vigilance. The way her hands rested in her lap with deliberate composure that spoke of trained control. The flicker of loneliness in those amber eyes that matched her words. I see someone carrying weight she can't share, he said softly. Someone curious about worlds beyond her own. Someone who asks questions instead of assuming answers. Someone, he hesitated. Someone I'd like to keep talking to, if she's willing. Zhavri's breath released slowly, and her shoulders dropped almost imperceptibly. Relaxation so subtle he nearly missed it. I am willing, she murmured. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched his hand where it rested on the bench between them. not grasping, just fingertips against knuckles. Among my people, this gesture means, I acknowledge you, not as subject or stranger, but as person of potential significance. Marcus turned his hand over carefully, letting her fingers rest in his palm. Her skin was cool but not cold, smooth but not quite like human skin. Her bioluminescence pulsed brighter where they touched. What does it mean when you do that? He asked, gesturing to the light. Emotional resonance, she repeated from earlier. The stronger the emotion, the brighter the response. I cannot hide it. She smiled slightly. Right now, it means I am pleased to be here with you. They sat in comfortable silence, hands touching, as alien stars began appearing in the darkening sky. The garden's bioluminescence grew brighter in response to twilight, creating a canopy of living light above them. Finally, Zhavri spoke again. Tomorrow there is a cultural ceremony, the Festival of First Knowing. It celebrates new connections and understanding between individuals. Traditionally, each Kavreth brings someone they wish to know better. She turned to him. Would you accompany me? Not as delegate to Empress, but as Marcus to Zhavri. His heart hammered. I would be honored. Good. She squeezed his hand gently before releasing it and standing. I should return you before my guards assume you've kidnapped me. Though I suspect they're more worried I've kidnapped you. Marcus stood, and she led him back through the gardens. At the entrance to the main palace, she paused. Marcus Webb, you have given me something I have not had in years. Genuine conversation without agenda. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to walk with you, he replied. She smiled. That warm, real smile that transformed her entire face. This is only the beginning. Tomorrow, you will see what it means when an empress decides someone is worth knowing. She turned and walked back into the palace, her bioluminescence leaving trails of light in her wake. Marcus stood there as moons rose overhead, realizing that humanity's first contact with the Kavreth Empire had just become deeply, wonderfully complicated. And he had absolutely no idea what he'd just agreed to. Morning on Kavruna arrived with gradient light, twin suns rising at different speeds, painting the sky in layers of amber and rose. Marcus stood before the mirror in his quarters, attempting to look presentable for a cultural ceremony he barely understood. Ambassador Chun had briefed him at dawn with an expression somewhere between concern and poorly hidden amusement. The Festival of First Knowing wasn't just a celebration. It was a public declaration of intent to pursue deep connection with another individual. Not marriage, not even formal courtship by Kavreth standards, but an acknowledgement of genuine interest that carried social weight. When an empress invites someone, Chun had explained carefully, the entire court pays attention. You're representing humanity today, Webb. But more importantly, he'd paused. You're representing yourself to her. Don't screw up either obligation. Now, staring at his reflection, Marcus wondered if he was catastrophically underprepared. A knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. He opened the door to find a Kavreth attendant holding an elegantly wrapped package. The attendant bowed with precise formality. From Her Imperial Majesty. She requests you wear this today. Inside, Marcus found clothing clearly designed for him. Soft fabric in deep blue that somehow felt both formal and comfortable, with subtle silver threading that caught light like captured stars. A note in elegant script, so you don't feel like a stranger at your first Kavreth festival. The casual signature made him smile. He dressed quickly, surprised by how well everything fit, and made his way to the festival plaza. The plaza was transformed. Floating platforms hovered at various heights, connected by bridges of light that solidified when stepped upon. Kavreth citizens and nobles alike mingled in cascading levels, their bioluminescence creating a living constellation of colors. Music drifted through the air, harmonic and strange, built from instruments Marcus couldn't identify. And there, descending a light bridge from an upper platform, was Zhavri. She wore deep violet that made her skin seem to glow from within. Her silver hair was arranged in an intricate style woven through with luminescent threads. But what struck him most was her expression when she saw him. Genuine pleasure that brightened her patterns like sunrise. She approached with that same graceful confidence, but something in her movements seemed less guarded than yesterday. She stopped before him, amber eyes scanning his appearance. "The clothing suits you," she observed. "I am pleased you wore it." "Thank you for sending it," Marcus replied. "I wanted to look appropriate." "You look perfect." She said it simply as fact rather than flattery. Then she extended her hand, not to shake, but palm up in clear invitation. In public, this gesture indicates partnership for the festival. If you accept, we will be seen as participants together. Marcus placed his hand in hers without hesitation. Her fingers closed gently, and her bioluminescence pulsed brighter. Around them, conversations stuttered. He caught the stares now, curious, shocked, fascinated. The Empress was publicly partnering with the human delegate. Zhavri seemed utterly unconcerned with the attention. She led him toward one of the light bridges, and he followed, trusting it would hold his weight. It did, feeling solid as stone but nearly invisible. "What happens at this festival?" he asked quietly. "We share experiences meant to build understanding," she explained. "Food, music, traditional stories. Partners exchange tokens of meaning, objects that represent something significant about themselves. It's..." She paused, searching for words. "It's designed to strip." They reached a platform where vendors offered alien delicacies on bioluminescent platters. Zhavri selected something that looked like crystallized fruit and held it toward Marcus. "Custom dictates partners feed each other the first taste. Symbolizes trust and care." He leaned forward, letting her place the fruit in his mouth. It dissolved instantly, flavor like starlight and honey. His eyes widened. "That's incredible." She smiled with clear satisfaction. "Now you for me." He chose something that appeared to be wrapped in edible flower petals and offered it as she'd done. She took it delicately, and her bioluminescence flared bright enough that nearby Kavreth glanced over with knowing expressions. "Your turn to explain that response," Marcus said quietly. "It means," she murmured, eyes bright with something warm, "that I find being fed by you unexpectedly pleasant." Heat crept up his neck, but before he could respond, she guided him to another platform where musicians played. Kavreth couples moved in flowing patterns that seemed half dance, half conversation through movement. "Can you dance?" Zhavri asked. "Not like that," Marcus admitted. "Good." She pulled him into the dancing space. "Then I'll teach you, and you'll be appropriately terrible, and it will be charming." She positioned his hands, one on her waist, one holding hers. Her skin was cool through the fabric, and he felt her bioluminescence pulse against his palm. "Follow my lead." The dance represents two individuals learning each other's rhythm. They moved, and Marcus was indeed terrible. He stepped on her feet twice, turned the wrong direction once, and nearly collided with another couple. But Zhavri laughed, not mocking, but genuinely delighted. Her patterns brightened each time he stumbled and corrected. "You're enjoying this too much," he muttered. "I am," she agreed. "Do you know why? Because I'm making a fool of myself? Because you're trying." She pulled him closer, voice dropping to something intimate. "Most partners would be stiff with fear of embarrassing me. You're simply present, tempting, honest about your mistakes. It's..." She searched for the word. "Endearing." They finished the dance without major catastrophe, and she led him to a quieter platform overlooking the plaza. They sat on a bench carved from dark crystal, and Zhavri reached into a hidden pocket of her gown. "The token exchange," she said softly. She pulled out a small object, a pendant on a silver chain, shaped like a teardrop with bioluminescent liquid inside. "This is called a heart glass. Among my people, it's given only to those we trust with genuine emotion. The liquid inside responds to the wearer's feelings. It glows when you're happy, dims when you're sad. It's..." She hesitated. "It's vulnerable to give, because it means you care enough to want to know their emotional truth." Marcus took it carefully, understanding the weight of what she was offering. "Zhavri, I don't have anything prepared. I didn't know." "Then give me something unprepared," she interrupted gently. Something honest. He thought for a moment, then unfastened the watch from his wrist, an old mechanical piece his grandfather had given him before his first deployment. This was given to me by someone who told me that time matters most when shared with people who matter. I've worn it through every important moment of my life. He held it out. I want you to have it, because right now feels like one of those moments. Her bioluminescence flared so brightly that several nearby Kavreth gasped audibly. She took the watch with trembling fingers, cradling it like something sacred. When she looked up, her eyes held moisture, the first time he'd seen her close to tears. "Marcus Webb," she whispered. "Do you understand what you've done? Given you my watch? Given me something you treasured without hesitation. Declared publicly that this time with me matters." She fastened the watch to her wrist carefully. This is more than I expected. More than I dared hope." She stood, pulling him up with her. "Come. There's one more tradition I want to share with you." She led him to the highest platform, one that seemed reserved, given how other couples avoided it. At its center stood a large crystal that pulsed with internal light. "This is called the reflection stone," Zhavri explained. "Partners stand before it together, and it shows their emotional resonance, whether their feelings align. It's used to determine compatibility." She turned to face him fully. "I want to try it with you, not because I doubt, but because I want to see." Marcus's heart pounded, but he nodded. They stood before the crystal together, hands clasped. The stone's internal light shifted, swirling, and then burst into brilliant patterns, gold and silver intertwining in complex spirals. Around them, witnesses murmured in awed voices. Zhavri stared at the display, and when she turned to Marcus, her expression held wonder. "I have never seen colors blend like that. It means resonance, true connection." Her voice wavered slightly. "Marcus, this is rare. Even among my people who choose each other deliberately, this level of alignment is rare." He squeezed her hand gently. "What does it mean for us?" She stepped closer, her free hand rising to rest against his chest, right over his heart. "It means I want to keep knowing you, not as Empress to delegate, as Zhavri to Marcus. It means—" She took a breath. "It means I'm willing to be vulnerable with you in ways I haven't been with anyone in years." The moment hung between them, crystalline and perfect. Then she rose on her toes and pressed her forehead to his, a gesture that felt deeply significant despite its simplicity. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I want to show you something no outsider has seen, my private sanctuary. Will you come?" "Yes," he breathed. She pulled back slowly, and her smile held promises he couldn't yet define but desperately wanted to understand. As the festival continued around them, Marcus realized he'd crossed a threshold he couldn't uncross. And standing there with Zhavri's hand in his, her watch on her wrist, and her heart glass warming against his chest, he knew he didn't want to go back anyway. The invitation arrived at dawn, not through an attendant, but via a small hovering drone that projected Zhavri's voice in soft tones. "Meet me at the Eastern Tower entrance when the first sun rises fully. Come alone. Trust me." Marcus trusted her. That was becoming dangerously easy. The Eastern Tower was separate from the main palace, a slender spire of dark crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Zhavri waited at its base, dressed simply in flowing garments of deep gray. No crown, no ceremonial attire. Just her, and somehow that made her more breathtaking than any imperial regalia could. "You came," she said, as if there'd been doubt. "Of course." She smiled, but something in it seemed nervous, a crack in her usual confidence. "What I'm about to show you is known only to the imperial family. Not even my closest advisors have seen this place." She placed her palm against the tower's surface, pulsed once, then a doorway appeared. "I am trusting you with something precious, Marcus. Not as political leverage, but as someone I believe will understand its meaning." They entered, and the door sealed behind them. Inside, a spiral staircase climbed into darkness broken only by soft bioluminescent veins in the walls. They ascended in silence, their footsteps echoing softly. At the top, another door, Another palm lock. And then they emerged into a space that stole Marcus's breath. The sanctuary was circular, with walls made entirely of transparent crystal. It overlooked all of Kavruna, the palace below, the city spreading out in geometric beauty, the twin suns painting everything in layers of light. But what dominated the space was a garden. Not the carefully cultivated perfection of the public gardens, but something wild, untamed. Earth plants grew alongside Kavreth flora in chaotic harmony. Roses tangling with bioluminescent vines, earth grass sprouting between alien flowers that chimed softly. How? Marcus breathed. Zhavri moved into the garden, her fingers trailing over familiar earth leaves. 20 years ago, when I was newly crowned, a human explorer ship passed through our system. There was an accident, collision with debris. We rescued the crew, but their botanist was dying. She asked me to take seeds from Earth, to plant them somewhere they could grow. Said it would mean a piece of humanity survived even if she didn't. Her voice softened. She didn't survive, but her garden did. Marcus knelt, touching earth grass he hadn't seen in 3 years. Emotion swelled in his chest. Homesickness and gratitude and something deeper. You've maintained this for 2 decades. I tend it myself, Zhavri said quietly. No attendants. No gardeners. Just me. It became. She paused, searching for words. It became the only place I could be simply Zhavri. Not Empress. Just someone caring for living things because they're beautiful and fragile and worth protecting. He stood, turning to face her. Why show me this? Her bioluminescence flickered, vulnerability made visible. Because yesterday, standing before the reflection stone, I realized something. I'm falling for you, Marcus Webb. Not infatuation. Not curiosity. She stepped closer. Real, terrifying, wonderful feelings that I haven't let myself experience since I took the crown. And I needed you to see this place, to see the part of me I keep hidden, before I let myself fall further. Marcus's heart hammered. Zhavri, let me finish, she said gently. I am Empress. My life is duty, protocol, political calculation. Relationships are strategic alliances or security risks. But you, her hand rose, hovering near his face. You looked at me in that reception hall with honest admiration. You stumbled through a dance and laughed at yourself. You gave me your grandfather's watch without hesitation. You see me, and I haven't been truly seen in so long that it hurts in the most wonderful way. He reached up slowly, covering her hovering hand with his own and bringing it to rest against his cheek. Her skin was cool and smooth, and she inhaled sharply at the contact. I'm falling too, he admitted. I don't know how this works. Our worlds, our positions, all the impossible logistics. But Zhavri, these past days with you have felt more real than anything I've experienced in years. Her bioluminescence blazed bright enough to illuminate the entire sanctuary. Tears gathered in her amber eyes, not falling, but present. I'm terrified, she whispered, of what I'm feeling, of what it means, of how much I want this despite everything that says it's impossible. What do you want? Marcus asked softly. She closed the remaining distance between them, her free hand coming to rest over his heart. I want to be selfish. I want to choose something for myself rather than my empire. I want. Her voice dropped to barely a breath. I want you to kiss me, Marcus, not because of duty or politics or cultural exchange. Because you want to. Because I want you to. His throat tightened. Are you sure? I have never been more certain of anything, she breathed. He cupped her face gently with his free hand, thumb brushing over the bioluminescent patterns on her cheek. They pulsed brighter under his touch. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers. She was cool where he was warm, soft where he was firm. Her bioluminescence exploded in cascading waves of light that raced down her arms and across her shoulders. She made a small sound against his mouth, surprise and pleasure combined, and kissed him back with a hunger that spoke of long-denied want finally unleashed. When they finally parted, both breathing harder, her bioluminescence continued pulsing in rapid patterns. She touched her lips with trembling fingers, staring at him with wonder. That was… Yeah, he managed. She laughed shakily. My people don't kiss. We have our own intimacy gestures. But that… She pulled him back, kissing him again with more confidence. That is extraordinary. They stood wrapped in each other as twin suns climbed higher, bathing the sanctuary in golden light. When they finally separated, Zhavri kept her arms around his waist, head resting against his chest. I can hear your heartbeat, she murmured. It's fast. You have that effect on me. She tilted her head up, bioluminescence still bright. Marcus, I need to tell you something. The Imperial Council meets in 3 days. They expect me to announce formal political alliances. Instead, I'm going to declare my intention to pursue a personal bond with you. His stomach tightened. What will that mean? Politically? Complications. Personally? She smiled. It means I'm choosing you. Publicly. Irrevocably. It will change everything for both of us. Will they try to stop you? They'll try. Her expression hardened slightly, the Empress emerging. But I am not asking permission. I am informing them. The question is… She cupped his face. Are you willing to face that? The scrutiny, the opposition, the impossible logistics. Marcus thought of Earth 3 years' travel away. Of his career, his family, everything he'd known. Then he looked at Zhavri, truly looked at her. At the woman who'd maintained a memorial garden for 2 decades. Who'd trusted him with her sanctuary. Who'd kissed him like he was air and she'd been drowning. Yes, he said simply. I'm willing. Her breath released in a rush. She pulled him down into another kiss, this one tender and grateful. When they parted, she pressed her forehead to his, that significant gesture from the festival. Then we face it together. But first… She pulled back with a mischievous smile. First, I want to show you how Kavreth express intimacy in private. She led him to a cushioned area surrounded by flowering earth roses and bioluminescent vines. They sat close, and she took his hand, placing it over her heart. He felt the cool flutter of her pulse, different rhythm than human but just as vital. This gesture means, I trust you with my life's rhythm. It's one of our most intimate acts. Marcus placed her hand over his heart in return. She gasped softly, feeling the warmth and pace of his human heartbeat. They sat like that, pulses syncing despite their differences, as the sanctuary glowed around them. Whatever happens with the council, Zhavri whispered, know this, you have changed me, in ways I didn't know I needed, in ways I will never regret. Same, Marcus said softly. Whatever comes next, I'm not walking away from this. From you. She smiled, radiant and genuine and utterly unguarded. And sitting in her secret garden with their hearts beating under each other's palms, Marcus knew he'd just made the most important decision of his life. The council meeting was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for an announcement that would change both their worlds. But right now, wrapped in Zhavri's cool presence and the warmth of earth flowers, he couldn't bring himself to worry about the future. The present was too precious to waste. The Imperial Council chamber was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings stretched into shadow. Seats arranged in rising tiers created an amphitheater effect where counselors looked down upon whoever stood at the center. Ancient crystal formations grew from the walls, pulsing with recorded history. Every important decision ever made in this room captured in light and memory. Marcus stood beside Zhavri at the chamber's heart, acutely aware of dozens of amber eyes fixed on them with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Zhavri wore full imperial regalia, crown gleaming, ceremonial robes flowing, every inch the empress. But her hand found his behind the concealment of her robes, fingers lacing through his in hidden solidarity. The High Counselor, an elderly Kavreth named Thevrin whose bioluminescence had faded to pale gray with age, rose from the highest seat. His voice carried weight earned through centuries of service. Your Imperial Majesty, you have called this emergency session to make an announcement of personal and political significance. The Council awaits your words. Zhavri's bioluminescence brightened. Not nervousness, but determination. She stepped forward, and Marcus felt her hand slip from his. She stood alone as empresses must. "Honored council," she began, voice clear and commanding. "You have served this empire with wisdom and dedication. You have guided our people through threats and triumphs. I have valued your counsel since my ascension. Today, I do not seek your counsel. I inform you of my decision." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Thevron's expression remained carefully neutral. "Speak, your majesty. I intend to pursue a formal personal bond with Lieutenant Marcus Webb of Earth. Not as political alliance. Not as diplomatic gesture. As genuine partnership built on mutual regard and emotional resonance." Her bioluminescence flared brighter. "This is my choice as Zhavri, not as Empress. But as Empress, I will not hide it or apologize for it." The chamber erupted. Counselors spoke over each other in rapid Kavreth, their bioluminescence flashing in agitated patterns. Thevron raised a hand, and silence gradually returned. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "forgive the council's surprise. Such a declaration is unprecedented. An empress bonding with an alien, particularly from a species we've had contact with for mere days." 18 days, Zhavri corrected. "Long enough to know my own heart." Another counselor, younger, with sharp features and bright orange patterns, stood abruptly. "This is reckless. We know nothing of human biology, culture, longevity. What if their species is incompatible? What of succession? What of the stability this empire requires?" "Counselor Vethris raises valid concerns," Thevron acknowledged. He turned to Marcus. "Lieutenant Webb, you have been silent. What say you to this?" Marcus felt every eye turn to him. He stepped forward, meeting Thevron's gaze directly. "High Counselor, I don't pretend to understand all the implications. I'm a xenobiologist and soldier, not a politician. But I know this, Zhavri has shown me more genuine humanity, or whatever the Kavreth equivalent is, than I've encountered in most humans. She's brilliant, compassionate, and strong enough to rule an empire, while still maintaining the capacity to care deeply about individual lives." He paused. "She chose to show me that side of herself. I choose to honor that trust by standing with her, no matter the complications." Vethris's patterns flashed angrily. "Pretty words, but you ask us to accept an unprecedented situation based on feelings. Empires are not built on sentiment." "No," Zhavri said sharply. "They are built on the courage to choose wisely when wisdom demands change. The Kavreth Empire has thrived by adapting, by forging unexpected alliances, by seeing potential where others see only risk." Her voice rang with authority. "I am not a child to be guided away from foolish infatuation. I am your Empress, and I have made my decision with full awareness of its weight." Thevron studied her for a long moment. When he spoke, his tone was gentler. "Your Majesty, no one questions your right to choose. We question only the timing and the complications. Perhaps a private bond, undeclared publicly? An arrangement that satisfies your heart without concerning the broader empire." "You suggest I hide him," Zhavri said flatly. "Treat this bond as shameful secret rather than honored choice. That is unacceptable." "Then what do you propose?" Thevron asked. "How do we present this to the people without causing instability?" Zhavri's bioluminescence steadied into calm brightness. "We present it as truth. I have found someone whose presence makes me better, as person and as Empress. Someone who sees beyond my crown to the individual beneath. Is that not what we wish for all our people? To be seen and valued for who they truly are." Silence fell. Then, unexpectedly, an older counselor in the back, one who'd remained quiet until now, stood. Her patterns glowed soft blue. "I am Counselor Mevra. I have served this council for 240 years. In that time, I have seen 3 emperors and 2 empresses rule. Each brought different strengths. But I have never seen one bring honesty like this." She looked at Zhavri. "Your grandmother hid her struggles. Your father buried his grief. You," her voice softened, "you show your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. That is not weakness. That is courage this empire needs. Other counselors shifted. Mevra's support clearly carried weight. Thevrin sighed deeply. If we accept this, and I emphasize if, there must be conditions. Lieutenant Webb would need to undergo cultural education, formal integration trials, and biological compatibility studies. The process could take months, years even. I accept those terms, Marcus said immediately. Zhavri turned to him, surprise flickering across her features. Marcus, you don't know what that entails. I know it means proving I'm serious, he interrupted gently. I know it means earning the right to stand beside you publicly. I'll do whatever it takes. Her bioluminescence brightened so intensely that several counselors shielded their eyes. She composed herself with visible effort, turning back to Thevrin. The council's conditions are acceptable. But during this process, Marcus remains here as my acknowledged partner, not as hidden secret. Thevrin exchanged glances with other counselors. Finally, he nodded slowly. Very well. But know this, Your Majesty. The people will watch. They will judge. If this bond proves destructive to your ability to rule, the council reserves the right to intervene. Understood, Zhavri said firmly. And when this bond proves strengthening rather than destructive, the council will acknowledge they were wrong to doubt. The session concluded with formal proclamations and bureaucratic details that Marcus barely processed. When they finally left the chamber, Zhavri's composure cracked. She pulled him into an empty corridor and wrapped her arms around him, trembling slightly. I thought they might refuse outright, she whispered against his shoulder. Force me to choose between Crown and you. What would you have chosen? Marcus asked quietly. She pulled back, cupping his face. I don't know, and that terrifies me, because I would have seriously considered giving up everything for you. Tears gathered in her eyes. That's how much you've come to mean to me in 18 days. He kissed her forehead gently. We have time now, to figure this out properly, to do it right. Months of trials, she said, voice wavering between laugh and sob. They'll test everything. Your knowledge, your adaptability, your worthiness. It will be exhausting. Then we'll be exhausted together, he said simply. She kissed him, desperate and grateful and tinged with relief. When they parted, her bioluminescence had settled into steady, warm glow. Come, she said, taking his hand openly now. Let me show you the quarters they've assigned you. They're in the residential wing, near my personal chambers. Not traditional for unmarked partners, but... She smiled slightly. I may have insisted. They walked through palace corridors, and Marcus noticed the stairs now. Attendants and nobles alike watching them pass with expressions of shock, curiosity, and in some cases cautious approval. Word had spread fast. At his new quarters, spacious rooms with a view of the gardens and Kavreth tapestries on the walls. Zhavri paused at the door. Marcus, the integration trials begin tomorrow. They will push you, test your limits, try to find reasons you're unsuitable. I know, he said calmly. I'm not worried. Why not? Her bioluminescence flickered with genuine confusion. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Because I've already passed the only test that matters. You chose me. Everything else is just proving to others what you already know. Her breath caught, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. The second time he'd seen her cry. How did I find you? She whispered. Dumb luck, he said, making her laugh through tears. And maybe because I was brave enough or foolish enough to stare at an empress. She kissed him softly. Brave and foolish. The perfect combination. She pulled back reluctantly. I should go. The council will want to speak with me privately, and you need rest for tomorrow. At the doorway she paused. Marcus, whatever happens in these trials, know that you've already changed me irrevocably. My heart is yours. That will not change regardless of what tests say. Same, he said, using her own word back at her. She smiled, radiant and genuine, then disappeared down the corridor. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, processing everything. The council, the trials, the impossible future stretching ahead. His communicator buzzed. A message from Ambassador Chun. Heard about the council session. You've either committed political genius or career suicide. Possibly both. Be careful, Webb. Marcus smiled slightly and typed back. Too late for careful. Already falling. He looked out at the gardens where this had all begun, at the twin suns setting in layers of amber and rose. Tomorrow would bring challenges he couldn't fully imagine. But tonight, he had Zhavri's heart glass warming against his chest and her watch on his wrist. Tonight, that was enough. The integration trials were not designed to be fair. They were designed to break unsuitable candidates. Marcus understood that on day one, when they led him to a chamber filled with Kavreth cultural artifacts and gave him 4 hours to identify their significance, purpose, and historical context. All without notes or assistance. He failed spectacularly. Day 3 brought physical endurance tests in Kavruna's higher gravity zones. Day 7, diplomatic scenarios where he had to navigate hypothetical political crises without offending imaginary alien dignitaries. He stumbled through each challenge, making mistakes, learning, adapting. But he didn't quit. Zhavri was forbidden from seeing him during trial hours. Council rules designed to prevent undue influence. They could meet only in evening hours in public spaces under observation. It was torture of a different kind. 2 weeks into the trials, Marcus sat in the palace's central garden, exhausted and frustrated. He just failed another cultural test, misidentified a sacred ceremonial gesture as a casual greeting, sending the examiner into a lecture about respect and attentiveness. Zhavri found him there, as she often did during their limited time together. She settled beside him on the bench, maintaining the appropriate public distance but letting her bioluminescence pulse in greeting. "Rough day?" she asked quietly. "I called the morning gesture a wave," Marcus said flatly. "The examiner looked at me like I'd spit on someone's grave." "To be fair, that's approximately equivalent," Zhavri said, then softened when he glared at her.
"I'm sorry."
"I know this is exhausting. They're trying to make me quit," he said. "Every test is designed to highlight what I don't know, what I'll never fully understand about your culture." She looked at him for a long moment, then glanced around to ensure no one was close enough to hear. "Marcus, you understand what they're actually testing, yes? My cultural knowledge, my adaptability, my worthiness to stand beside an empress." "No," she said firmly. "They're testing whether you'll break. Whether your commitment to me is strong enough to endure frustration, humiliation, and failure. They want to see if you're here for novelty or for something real." He met her amber eyes. "So what do I do?" "Exactly what you're doing. Keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep being honest about your mistakes." Her bioluminescence brightened. "You don't have to be perfect, Marcus. You just have to be persistent." 3 weeks in, something shifted. The trials grew harder, but Marcus found his rhythm. He started asking examiners questions when he didn't understand, admitted ignorance rather than guessing, showed genuine curiosity about Kavreth culture instead of just trying to memorize facts. And slowly, grudgingly, some examiners began responding with actual teaching rather than mere testing. Counselor Mevra, the elder who'd supported Zhavri in the council session, appeared during his 4th week. She sat across from him in a private study chamber, her faded bioluminescence barely visible in the dim light. "Lieutenant Webb," she began, "your results are interesting." "That's diplomatic for terrible," Marcus said. She smiled slightly. "Diplomatic for unexpected. You fail frequently. You make cultural errors regularly. Yet your persistence ratings are higher than any candidate I've assessed in 70 years. She leaned forward. "Tell me why you continue when it's clear this process is designed to discourage you." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Because Zhavri is worth it. Every failed test, every humiliation, every moment of doubt. It's all worth it to stand beside her publicly, honestly, without her having to hide what we are." Mevra studied him. "What are you, Lieutenant? Define your relationship in Kavreth terms." He thought carefully. "We're partners learning each other's languages. She's teaching me her world, and I'm showing her mine. We're not trying to erase our differences. We're figuring out how to honor them while building something new. And if the council ultimately refuses approval, then I'll stay anyway, Marcus said simply. As friend, as visitor, as whatever capacity she'll allow. Because being near her in any form is better than being without her completely. Mevra's bioluminescence pulsed slightly brighter, the first time he'd seen her patterns strengthen. You understand, Lieutenant, that you just passed the most important test of all. The one that has no official name or score. She stood. I will recommend to the council that your trials be shortened. You have demonstrated sufficient character. The rest is mere technical knowledge that can be learned with time. 6 weeks after the trials began, Thevrin summoned both Marcus and Zhavri to a private council chamber. Only core counselors present. No ceremony, no formal procedure. Thevrin looked tired. Lieutenant Webb, you have completed or failed, depending on perspective, 38 separate assessments. Your cultural knowledge scores are marginal. Your political acumen is underdeveloped. Your understanding of Kavreth history is superficial. Marcus felt his stomach sink. Beside him, Zhavri's bioluminescence flickered anxiously. However, Thevrin continued, your character assessments are exemplary. Every examiner reports the same traits. Genuine curiosity, humble persistence, honest admission of ignorance, and unwavering commitment. Counselor Mevra has argued passionately that these qualities matter more than perfect test scores. He paused, amber eyes moving between them. The council has voted. By narrow margin, we approve your integration. You will be granted status as recognized partner to the Empress, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. The announcement will be made publicly in 3 days. Zhavri's bioluminescence exploded in brilliant cascades. She turned to Marcus, and for a moment protocol shattered. She threw her arms around him, trembling with relief and joy. Marcus held her, ignoring the counselor's presence, feeling his own eyes burn with unexpected tears. When they finally separated, Thevrin was smiling slightly, the first time Marcus had seen any warmth from the High Counselor. Your Majesty, Lieutenant Webb, you have made this very complicated for us. But perhaps... He exchanged glances with other counselors. Perhaps complication is exactly what this empire needs. Stagnation comes from comfort. Growth requires challenges that make us uncomfortable. That evening, finally free from trial restrictions, Zhavri led Marcus back to her sanctuary. The secret garden was bathed in moonlight from Kavruna's 3 moons, creating layers of silver glow over earth flowers and Kavreth vines. They stood among the roses and luminescent blooms, holding each other without words necessary. 6 weeks, Zhavri finally whispered. 6 weeks of barely seeing you, of watching you struggle, of wanting to help but being forbidden. It was agony. Worth it, Marcus said, pulling back to look at her. Now we can do this properly, publicly, without hiding. She cupped his face, her bioluminescence steady and bright. In 3 days, the entire empire will know. My people, your people, everyone. Her voice dropped. Are you ready for that? The scrutiny, the attention, the pressure. Are you? He asked back. She smiled, that radiant, unguarded expression he'd come to treasure. Yes, because I will not spend my life hiding the person who makes me feel most alive. She kissed him, and this time there was no urgency or desperation. Just certainty, just rightness, just 2 people who'd chosen each other despite impossible odds and were ready to face whatever came next. Together. The public announcement was scheduled for midday, when both suns reached their zenith and the palace plaza filled with citizens gathering for the weekly imperial address. Marcus stood in Zhavri's private chambers, adjusting the formal Kavreth attire they designed specifically for him. Deep blue with silver threading that complemented her violet ceremonial robes. His hands shook slightly. Zhavri appeared from her dressing chamber, fully adorned in imperial regalia, crown gleaming, ceremonial robes flowing, bioluminescence controlled into steady, regal brightness. She looked every inch the Empress, except for her eyes. When she looked at him, her eyes held nervous excitement that no amount of imperial training could fully mask. Ready? she asked softly. No, Marcus admitted. But I'm going anyway. She crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. Today changes everything. Once we stand before the people together, there's no taking it back. No retreating to privacy. We become symbol as much as individuals. I know. He squeezed her cool fingers. And I'm choosing it anyway. Choosing you anyway. Her bioluminescence flared briefly before she reined it back under control. Then let's show them what choosing each other looks like. They walked through palace corridors side by side. Guards fell in around them, not separating them, but flanking them as unit. Attendants bowed as they passed, and Marcus noticed expressions had shifted. Still curious, still uncertain, but no longer openly hostile. The trials had done that, proved his commitment in ways words never could. At the plaza entrance, Thevrin waited with core counselors. The High Counselor bowed formally to Zhavri. Your Majesty, the people await. He turned to Marcus. Lieutenant Webb, from this moment forward, you represent not just yourself, but a bridge between our species. Do not take that responsibility lightly. I won't, Marcus promised. They emerged onto the upper platform overlooking the plaza. The crowd below was massive, thousands of Kavreth citizens filling every available space, their collective bioluminescence creating a sea of shifting colors. When Zhavri appeared, the crowd erupted in formal acknowledgement, a harmonic hum that resonated through the air like living sound. She stepped forward, and silence fell instantly. Her voice carried across the plaza through crystalline amplification. My people, I stand before you today not only as your empress, but as someone who has made a choice that affects both my personal life and our empire's future. She paused, letting the weight settle. 6 weeks ago, I met Lieutenant Marcus Webb of Earth. In him, I found qualities I have long valued. Honesty, courage, genuine curiosity about our culture, and the strength to persist through challenges that would break lesser individuals. She gestured, and Marcus stepped forward to stand beside her. Thousands of eyes fixed on him. I have chosen to form a recognized personal bond with him, not as political alliance, not as diplomatic gesture, but as genuine partnership built on mutual respect and emotional connection. Today, I ask you to accept him not as outsider, but as someone who will stand beside me as I serve you. The plaza held its breath. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice called out in Kavreth, a phrase Marcus had learned during his trials. May your bond bring strength. It was traditional blessing for new partnerships. Another voice joined, then another. Within moments, the entire plaza echoed with the blessing, repeated in waves of harmonic sound. Zhavri's bioluminescence flared brilliantly, genuine emotional response she couldn't control. She reached for Marcus's hand, clasping it openly before thousands of witnesses. Thank you, she said, voice thick with feeling, for your trust, for your acceptance, for allowing your empress to be also simply Zhavri, someone who has found connection worth celebrating. The ceremony continued with formal declarations and traditional acknowledgments. But the moment that mattered was already past. The people had accepted them, not unanimously. Marcus caught sight of Kavreth in the crowd whose bioluminescence flickered with disapproval. But enough. Enough to make this real. Enough to make it possible. Afterward, in the sanctuary garden where so much had begun, Marcus and Zhavri finally allowed themselves to breathe. She removed her crown, setting it aside with visible relief, and collapsed onto the cushioned area among earth roses. That was terrifying, she admitted. Completely terrifying. Marcus settled beside her, pulling her close. You were incredible. They love you. They love their empress, she corrected. But today they saw Zhavri too. That's... She struggled for words. That's something I never thought I could have. They lay in comfortable silence, watching Kavruna's moons rise as twin suns set. Finally, Zhavri spoke again. What happens now? With your career, your life on Earth? We haven't discussed practicalities. I've been thinking about that, Marcus said. Earth will want me to stay here, I'm now the most experienced human in Kavreth culture by default. They'll probably make it official, permanent diplomatic assignment or something similar. And does that make you happy? She asked carefully. He turned to face her fully. Being with you makes me happy. The location and job title are just details. Her bioluminescence softened. I want you to be honest. If this costs you things you value, it won't, he interrupted gently. Zhavri, 3 months ago, I was studying alien plant life and filing reports no one read. Now I'm learning an entire culture, building something meaningful with someone extraordinary, and helping bridge 2 species. That's not sacrifice. That's upgrade. She laughed, the sound lighter than he'd ever heard. Upgrade. Very romantic phrasing. I'm a scientist, not a poet. You're my scientist, she corrected, kissing him softly. And that makes you perfect. They spent the evening in the sanctuary, talking about futures and possibilities, about integrating earth plants with Kavreth gardens, about cultural exchange programs, about the simple daily life they build together despite its complicated circumstances. As triple moonlight painted the garden in silver shades, Zhavri pulled out a small box. I have something for you, a traditional gift for recognized partners. Inside was a silver band, not quite a ring, more like a bracer that would fit around his forearm. Intricate patterns covered its surface, and when Zhavri touched it, the patterns glowed with soft light. It's called a bond mark, she explained. It's linked to my own. She revealed a matching piece on her arm, hidden beneath her sleeve. When worn, they pulse in sync with each other. So even when separated, we can feel that the other is near. Marcus let her fasten it around his forearm. The moment it closed, he felt a faint pulse, rhythmic and steady. That's your heartbeat, Zhavri whispered. And this is yours, he said, touching her bond mark and feeling the same pulse reflected back. She kissed him deeply, and her bioluminescence cascaded in waves that lit the entire garden. When they finally parted, both smiling, she rested her forehead against his. You know, she murmured, when you first stared at me in that reception hall, I never imagined this. I thought perhaps you'd be amusing distraction, brief entertainment. And now I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Her voice softened. You have become essential, Marcus Webb, my partner, my anchor, my extraordinary human. And you, he said, cupping her face gently, are my Zhavri, not Empress, not symbol, just the woman who trusted me with her sanctuary, her truth, and her heart. They sat wrapped in each other as the night deepened around them, bond marks pulsing in perfect synchronization. Outside the sanctuary, an empire was adjusting to its empress's unprecedented choice. Diplomatic channels between Earth and Kavruna were exploding with questions and opportunities. Political analysts were writing treatises on cross-species partnerships and cultural integration. But in the secret garden where Earth roses grew beside alien flowers, none of that mattered. There were only 2 people who'd looked at each other across impossible distances, cultural, biological, political, and chosen connection anyway. Chosen each other anyway. Marcus thought back to that first moment. The stare, the smile, the beginning of everything. He'd been terrified of causing an incident. Instead, he'd found something he didn't know he'd been searching for. Purpose, partnership, home in a place 3 years from Earth. What are you thinking? Zhavri asked, tracing patterns on his palm. That I'm glad I stared, he admitted. That I'm glad you smiled back. She laughed softly. Best diplomatic incident in imperial history. Agreed. They stayed in the sanctuary until dawn painted the sky in layers of amber and rose, the same colors that had witnessed their first meeting. And as twin suns rose over Kavruna, Marcus realized something profound. He'd crossed space looking for alien life to study. Instead, he'd found someone who studied him right back, who saw past species and status to the person beneath, who chose him despite every logical reason not to. And that connection, that choice, that love, was worth more than all the discoveries in the universe combined. That's where we leave Marcus and Zhavri, wrapped in dawn light, bond marks pulsing, Hearts aligned across every difference that should have kept them apart. Their story is just beginning. And if you want to see where it goes next, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in humanity's most unexpected love story among the stars.